Hola, buenos dias. Mi nombre es Timoteo. My name is Tim, and I serve gratefully as minister of this congregation. We don't need the pulpit on, just the... Thank you, Mark. And as you can see, my pronouns are he, him. And I saw someone walk in whose name is Tim, and that's awesome when you ever meet somebody named Tim, because Tims are always awesome people. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno, California, on this annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sunday. We want to welcome everybody on our virtual campus. Hello to you. We're glad you're here. Welcome to everybody on our Alluvial Ave campus. Hello, hello, hello. And to everyone who will be watching the service later on Facebook or YouTube, we also give you a good morning wave. We truly are one congregation in many places. Our monthly worship theme for January is Finding Our Center. We acknowledge that our Alluvial Avenue Church campus sits within the traditional homelands of the Yokuts people. This land acknowledgement is to honor the elders of the indigenous peoples and to confess and lament the genocide, forceful removal and displacement of the people whose lands and territories were stolen from them. As part of this recognition, we encourage learning more about injustices and the histories of indigenous peoples, and also to support or visit the following resources: Native American Rights Fund and the National Indian Education Association. As a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we believe that inclusive welcome is a spiritual practice. That's why we welcome you no matter your race, culture of origin, age, spiritual background, or religious beliefs. We welcome you no matter your disabilities, the amount of money in your bank account, the level of education, or your neurodiversity. We welcome you if you are lesbian, gay, bi, trans, non-binary, or gender fluid. I always like saying that at a church, you know, because there's not a lot of congregations in Fresno who would say that. You are welcome with or without documentation. No one is illegal at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno. All are welcome here. Todos bienvenidos aquí. This morning we have two ways for those who are on our virtual campus to share a personal joy, sorrow, or gratitude or concern. You can type those right into the chat box, or you can text them to us at 559-209-4977. We need you to do that right now, though, so that there's time to get it to me before that exciting moment in our service. So for those of us here on Alluvial Ave, and also those of us on our virtual campus, Ian, who is our usual video live stream tech, had to take the week off. And so we have Ron, who is stepping in as a volunteer. It is his first time running slides, the live stream, and the video feeds. So what that means is we have such a big heart and good intentions with Ron, but as he said, don't expect perfection. So we're going to ask for your understanding. And Tina is ready, Lorenzo is ready. We'll roll whatever happens, whatever pops up. If a video plays or it doesn't, we'll figure it out. Now, knowing that, may we in our chat box, in person, or in the silence of your precious human heart, let's take a moment to say buenos dias and greet one another. Hey, good to see you. Welcome to
I will give it again.
They're very rambunctious here on the Alluvial Avenue campus this morning. It's all right. It is the warmth of community. As we prepare to begin our annual Martin Luther King Jr. service and celebration, I invite us to allow the sound of the tingsha to take us to that quiet place within that knows love, but also knows how much work remains to be able to make that love visible in the form of justice and equity in our world.
Siya bukan yen cuencos, siya bukan yen cuencos, siya bukan yen cuencos, siya bukan yen cuencos, siya hamba, siya bukan yen cuencos, siya hamba, siya bukan yen cuencos, caminando en la luz de Dios, 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 caminando, vamos caminando. Vamos caminando en la luz de Dios, caminando, vamos caminando en la luz de Dios. We are marching in the light of God, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, we are marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, we are marching, we are marching in the light of God.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. My name is Tina Botts, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and my role today is worship associate. If you have a candle or chalice with you on our virtual campus, bring it close as we'll be lighting it in a moment. This is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. We honor today not just Dr. King, but the many different voices that have been part of the civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. In that spirit, I offer these inspiring words from tennis great Serena Williams. I have had people look past me because of the color of my skin. I have had people look over me because I was a woman. I have had critics say I would never win another Grand Slam when I was only at number 7. And here I stand today with 21 Grand Slam titles, and I'm still going. I hope these words are inspiring to you about the power of believing in yourself when there are great odds against your success. With these words held in your heart, I invite you to light your chalice or candle at home while Tim lights the chalice on our Alluvial Avenue campus. In the warmth of these flames, let us rise in body and spirit and join in singing our song of praise, "This Little Light of Mine."
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. En español. Mi pequeñita luz, la dejaré brillar. Mi pequeñita luz, la dejaré brillar. Mi pequeñita luz, la dejaré brillar. Brillará, brillará, brillará. Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Gonna build up a world. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Say it with me now. Let it shine, let it shine. From the bottom, let it shine.
I invite us to remain standing as we say together the words of our mission statement as it appears on the screen. La misión de la Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de Fresno es amar inclusivamente, crecer espiritualmente, servir con gratitud y trabajar por la justicia. The Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno is to love inclusively, grow spiritually, serve gratefully, and work for justice. Please be seated. And please welcome your very own Director of Lifelong Learning, Karen.
Chat with you a little closer here today. So, good morning, buenos dias, soy Karen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella. And thank you all so much for being here to join with us this morning. Today, as we celebrate the life and work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I wanted to take some time to make sure that my friends of all ages know how they can make a difference. Sometimes it's important for us to stand up and work to make a difference when things are unfair. We've all probably experienced something that feels unfair, and it doesn't feel good. Maybe disappointing, or frustrating, or sad. And some unfair things are beyond our control, like maybe we were really excited to go and play outside, and then a big storm comes, and there's lightning and lots of rain, and it's not safe for us to play outside. And that doesn't seem fair. It's very disappointing. But we can't do anything about it. Other unfair things we can do something about. Things like some members of our community here in Fresno and beyond don't have enough food to eat. That's really not fair. And wait, there's enough food to go around, so we can do something about that. You might notice or learn things about your community or that take place in your life that are unfair things. And we can change them using our powerful voice, creativity, and love. No one is ever too young or too old to make a difference. That's what a group of young people thought after hearing Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak one day in 1963, which was back when some of the grown-ups here were maybe young kids, and if you're a child yourself today, maybe before even your parents or caretakers were born. These kids gathered together in huge numbers, almost 5,000 school-age students, for the Children's Crusade in Birmingham, Alabama. Let's look around at who's here today. We are maybe 100 to 150 people usually on Sundays. Now imagine 10 times this many people, and then 5 times again. And they were all kids or school-age students. And these kids put themselves in a really dangerous position because they knew that the police would maybe do them harm when they went into the streets, but they knew that it was important for them to be out there to say that it wasn't fair that Black people didn't have the same rights that white people did. When people around the country saw photos from this march and saw what was really going on, it changed a lot of people's opinions. They learned how unfair things really were, and they also started asking for change. So these kids made a huge difference. Kids today still make a difference, and I wanted to share with you a quote from a little activist in this awesome book that I picked out from our very own Norelma Walker Youth Library. And if anyone wants to learn more about activists of all ages, there's lots more wonderful books to check out there. So, as we prepare to set off on our way and discover how we want to make a difference this year, I leave you with these wise words from Mari, age 9. Kids can do anything they set their minds to. You just have to keep speaking up, keep moving forward, and don't get discouraged if people don't take you seriously at first. Adults are harder to convince than kids. Now, if you are of the younger age variety and would like to join us for art and activities, we will make our way through the center doors and out to our classrooms. Thank you so much, everyone.
We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go.
Go that way, Millie. There you go.
So this past May, our congregation joined several hundred other Unitarian Universalist congregations around the country in voting to add an 8th principle to what had been our core 7 religious principles of Unitarian Universalism. The 8th principle directly names white supremacy culture and our need to dismantle it within each one of us, within this congregation, and within our denomination at large. Our Mosaic Makers team is an active group of congregants who are leading the learning that is necessary to do this sacred spiritual work. And they have asked several congregants over the next several months to read and reflect on an extraordinary article that some of you may know called White Supremacy Culture by Tima Okun. This is a powerful article. The link is being put into our chat box on our virtual campus. There will be copies of this article at the adult programs table after the service, and your ushers will be handing a little URL so that you'll be able to look up this article online later today. But please welcome from our virtual campus our first reflection, Emily.
my name is Emily Kaisinga, and I serve gratefully as a member of the worship arts team. I was actually introduced to Tema Apun's article on white supremacy culture during a class through the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno on being white in the Black Lives Matter movement in 2017. I'll be honest that I initially had a really hard time accepting the feedback offered in the article, but if that's not kind of the point, I don't know what is. My worldview as a cisgender white woman is so informed by white privilege and white supremacy culture that understanding an alternative reality to how the world could operate is difficult for me. When I first read the article, I had an internal monologue of rebuttal for pretty much every point offered. Perfectionism, that's just having high standards. Sense of urgency, that's caring about efficiency. Defensiveness, what, am I being defensive? You get the point. I find the antidote section for each characteristic to be incredibly helpful. If I look to those, they sound like creating a culture built very in line with my own Unitarian Universalist values. For only one right way, for example, an antidote is accept that there are many ways to get to the same goal. One way I've seen this play out in my professional life as a special educator is that students who are able to show their learning in different ways often feel more successful. If the goal is to show comprehension of a text, for example, showing that in an essay isn't the only way to do that. A student could prepare an oral presentation or a slideshow and reach the goal in a way that accommodates their needs and allows them to be successful. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we could all feel equally comfortable and valued in all the spaces in which we live? And shouldn't getting to that place be part of our quest as Unitarian Universalists?
So I invite us to take a deep breath in as Ron moves Emily from the virtual campus. She wants to open her eyes at home. I know she does. And if we could just move Emily, there we go. Let's advance that. There we go. Let's all take a deep breath in, and as we do so, imagine we are breathing in peace, and we breathe out love. We take another breath in together and we breathe in peace. We breathe out love. One more breath together, imagining that we truly are breathing in peace into every cell in our body. We transform it and we breathe out love. As we continue breathing together, in this space that is made sacred by our beautiful humanity, imperfect humanity, but beautiful humanity. I invite you to allow that breath to carry you back over the last 7 days, the last week, the gift you've had of being alive. And a question. In the last week, how connected were you to your center? Just as importantly, when you feel off balance, what is one thing you do to return yourself to center? One of the ways we return ourselves to center, and it's really a spiritual practice, is by creating the space for those of us who wish to share a personal joy, concern, or sorrow to be able to do that. Some of us stop at the small table at the entrance to our Alluvial Ave campus. Others of us typed into our chat box or texted from our virtual campus. And these are just a few of the things that are alive for us. George here on Alluvial was pleased to see, and if we could have the next slide, that the federal government has renamed an offensively named valley to Yokuts Valley. And I love this picture. This is Indigenous U.S. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland making the announcement about Yokuts Valley, and congratulations to all those in this area who worked so hard to force, and it was a force, this change. We also want to acknowledge the massive rainstorms in California, our next slide, and acknowledge the flooding, death, and destruction. And we also name this as the impact of human-created climate change. Other things alive for us on our campus. Maria is grateful to find this church. I've only been there in person once, but enjoying the virtual services nearly as much. Thank you, Maria. We love having you part of this church community. We have Anonymous, grateful for their dear friend Dakota. He is here and attending the online service. He also knows how to help me keep a positive attitude and is overall my best of friends. Celebrating Dakota this morning. Alicia, also on our virtual campus, is feeling gratitude for her sisters, sorrow for the homeless on this winter morning, and joy for Yosemite Park, and we'll add that to the Sierras and all the snow, much needed snow that is falling. Chloe Emily from our virtual campus is saying thank you, Ron, for stepping in this morning to lead our virtual campus with slides and live stream. Angelique is grateful to the Children's Religious Exploration team that made the campfire so much for my children yesterday. That campfire was inside, obviously, because it was raining outside. And James here on our Alluvial Avenue campus, one of our new members who we cherish, is thankful for an amazing community. Millie is thankful for teacher Karen. We also would like to lift up our beloveds, those who are unable to be with us in person, and yet they're with us spiritually, and we are with them. And as the slide appears, we remember Tony E., Margaret H., Bev F., Edith H., William H., Glenda R., Pat M. And so for all that has been shared, for all that we hold in the sacred silence of our own hearts, and for all those who on this day have no one to remember them, no one to say their name with gentleness or kindness, we light our candle of community. By our remembering, may we and they be blessed. We light a second candle, as is our custom. And this candle burns for the 6.7 million citizens of this world who've lost their lives in this pandemic, 1.2 million of whom are citizens of this country. And so in the light of these candles, our call to meditation as we advance past the next slide and into the next slide with our words. This reminds us the power of our breath, our meditation on breathing.
Mark, would you bring up number 2 and 3, please? One minute. Go again, Bill.
When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Cuando respiro paz. Cuando exhalo amor. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Cuando Cuando respiro,
respiro paz.
Cuando exhalo,
exhalo amor.
when I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
I breathe out love.
cuando
Respiro paz.
cuando exhalo,
exhalo amor.
May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. We want to advance to Lee on our virtual campus from the East Coast. So if we just move the next slide. It's good. And the next slide. And welcome Lee.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Great. Okay.
Can we have the pulpit, Mark?
Go ahead.
We ready? Hello again. Tina Botts here, operating as your worship associate. These are the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from his 1967 collection of essays entitled, "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" Written 56 years ago, Dr. King's words possess a startling relevance for this present moment in 2023. Dr. King writes, "Love that does not satisfy justice is no love at all. Love at its best is justice concretized. Structures of evil do not crumble by passive waiting. If history teaches us anything, it's that evil is recalcitrant and determined and never voluntarily relinquishes its hold. We must get rid of the false notion that there is some miraculous quality in the flow of time that inevitably heals all evils. In this generation, the children of shadows are still shrewder than the children of light. They are always zealous and conscientious in using time for their evil purposes. They do not wait on time. They make time their fellow conspirator. If they want to defeat a fair housing bill, they don't say to the public, "Be patient, wait on time, and our cause will win." Rather, they use time to spend big money, to disseminate half-truths, and to confuse the popular mind. But the forces of light cautiously wait and timidly act, so we end up with a double destruction: the destructive violence of hateful people and the destructive silence of good people. But mass nonviolent demonstrations will not be enough. They must be supplemented by a continuing job of organization. To produce change, people must be organized to work together in units of power. These units may be political, as in the case of voters' leagues and political parties. They may be economic, as in the case of groups of tenants who join forces to form a union, or groups of unemployed and underemployed who organize to get jobs and better wages. More and more, the civil rights movement will have to engage the task of organizing people into permanent groups to protect their own interests and produce change on their behalf. This task is tedious and lacks the drama of demonstrations, but it is necessary for meaningful results. Let us be those creative dissenters who will call our beloved nation to a higher destiny, to a new plateau of compassion, to a more noble expression of humanness. Our very survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge. May it be so, blessed be. Amen.
I invite us to add our voices into this mix as we rise, embody our spirit, and join in singing. We are marching in the light of love, a freedom song from South Africa.
Sing along with us, too. We are marching in the light of love. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of love. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of love. Now we're going to learn. We are learning in the light of love. 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 We are learning, learning, we are learning, learning, we are learning in the light of love. We are learning, learning, we are learning, learning, we are learning in the light of love. And we're changing. We are changing in the light of love. 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 We are changing, changing, we are changing, changing, we are changing in the light of love. We are changing, changing, we are changing, changing, we are changing in the light of love.
We're gonna march.
We are marching in the light of love. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of love. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of love.
Please be seated. And let's again appreciate Stolen Thunder. Her name was Ida B. Wells. Would you say that name with me as her picture appears? Ida B. Wells. One more time, yes. Ida B. Wells. She has been called the spiritual grandmother of the civil rights movement. She organized one of our nation's first economic boycotts of a major city in protest of its racism. She was our nation's first investigative reporter. She authored the first book in the nation to shine light on the lynching of black people in America. She founded the first black kindergarten in Chicago. She campaigned to integrate the YMCA and the YWCA. She was the first black correspondent for a major white newspaper. She was the first black woman to co-own and publish her own newspaper. She helped found the National Association for Colored Women. She was a founder of the NAACP. She was a leader in the women's suffrage movement and a friend of Unitarian Susan B. Anthony. At President Wilson's inauguration in 1913, she was part of a 5,000-strong women's march for the right to vote. On that day, 110 years ago, white suffragists demanded that she march in a separate black section. She refused. A year before her death in 1931, she ran for the Illinois State Senate. Ida B. Wells did all of this and so much more. And yet, her name has been mostly whitewashed out of our memory of the black civil rights movement. It's been whitewashed out in part because she was a powerful black woman. She is whitewashed out in part because she did not speak of a dream, but exposed a nightmare. She is whitewashed out because she lifted up a horrific history of race, violence, and terror that white America still is unwilling to confront, even 92 years after her death. But long before there was Coretta Scott King and Dr. Martin Luther King, long before there was Rosa Parks and Mamie Till and Malcolm X and Medgar Evers and Fannie Lou Hamer and A. Philip Randolph and Ella Baker and John Lewis and Maya Angelou and Carol Moseley Brown and Barack Obama, long before there was a Black Lives Matter movement, long before there was Vice President Kamala Harris and Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Long before all of them, there was Ida B. Wells. Will you say her name? Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was born in 1862. Born an enslaved black person in the Deep South in Hollis Springs, Mississippi. Her parents, Elizabeth and James, were enslaved. 3 years after her birth, at the end of the Civil War, Elizabeth, James, and Ida found themselves among the great mass of black people declared free by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. As Ida would quickly learn, slavery may have been abolished in name, but the white supremacist subjugation of black Americans continued unabated and unrelenting in its violence. Those who study Ida B. Wells comment that hers was a life centered by extraordinary courage, a courage that, as Cornel West notes, gave her a willingness to be candid and honest about sources of pain and suffering and to speak it directly, regardless of the price, regardless of what burden goes along with it. And my dear ones, she paid a mighty price. Historian Krista Buskendorf remembers the first time that a young Ida B. Wells exhibited this extraordinary courage that she carried with her throughout her life. She writes, at the age of 16, Ida B. Wells and her 5 siblings were orphaned in a yellow fever epidemic. The community decided to distribute the children, her 5 siblings, to be adopted by other families. And as a young girl of 16, Ida B. Wells says, no way, you can't do that. Give me a job instead, and I will take care of my brothers and sisters. Biskendorf comments, it was unheard of for so young a woman to be the independent head of a family. This, she writes, is the first moment when you see her courage. To support her siblings, Wells became a teacher, first in a nearby town, and then in 1881, at the age of 19, in Memphis, Tennessee. There, she realized that she was paid as a black woman teacher half the salary of the white teachers of the time. She spoke out about that. Memphis did not like that. It was there in Memphis that she also took another courageous action. She was riding home in a train in the first-class ladies' coach when a white conductor demanded that she, a black woman, move to the smoking car. She refused, and when he placed a hand on her to restrain her, she defended herself physically. The result was her being dragged from the train. But then, as a 19-year-old black teenager in post-Civil War Tennessee, Wells sued the train company for discrimination, and she won. Dear ones, that was 74 years before Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat in Montgomery, Alabama. Ida B. Wells wrote about this experience and other racial injustices, and black newspapers around the country began to pick up and publish her essays, and black Americans read her work around the country. As a noted white New York publisher declared, Wells has become famous as one of the few of our women who handle a goose quill pen as easily as any man in newspaper work. If she was a man, she would be a humming independent in politics. She has plenty of nerve and is sharp as a steel trap. For us to truly understand the courage and the impact of Ida B. Wells requires us to put her into the context of those times, those early days after the Civil War, when states and local laws were being put into place to disempower, disenfranchise Black Americans. And to challenge those Jim Crow laws was to face jailing, terror, and death. Cornel West, in his book, Black Prophetic Fire, says, Ida B. Wells is not only unique, but she is the exemplary figure full of prophetic fire in the face of American terrorism, which is the construction of Jim Crow and Jane Crow, when lynchings occurred every 2.5 days for over 50 years in America. Think about that for a minute. Cornel West writes, Black people were slaves. Then, because of the 13th Amendment, they were made citizens. Then are remade into subjects who are subjected to an American terrorist order. They are no longer slaves in the old sense, yet not citizens, but sub-citizens who are wrestling with this terror. Cornel West points out that at the time, the leading Black voices in America were ignoring the routine lynching face of American terrorism. No one was willing to speak about it, write about it, or target that lynching face of American terrorism the way Ida B. Wells did. In her groundbreaking journalism, she wrote, quote, Black men and women and children have regularly met violent death at the hands of the white mob, and the rest of America is silent. End of quote. For naming this in print in her own newspaper, she was run out of Memphis, and a bounty was put on her head. As noted in an April 2018 article online in The Guardian by David Smith, some 4,075 African Americans were lynched in 12 southern states beginning in 1877, and another 300 were lynched in northern states. Some lynchings were witnessed by big crowds who brought children in picnic baskets as if at a public entertainment. David Smith quotes Ida B. Wells's granddaughter, Michelle Duster, who says, they would torture people before they were killed and dismember them afterward and pass around the body parts. It was shocking to me that people would take bones as souvenirs. The more I learned about that level of violence, the more I appreciated what it took for my grandmother to do what she did. Ida B. Wells was propelled to action when 3 of her friends were lynched by a white mob in Memphis, a white mob that took offense that 3 Black men were successful store owners. David Smith notes that at the age of 25, Wells denounced the lynching in print, armed herself with a pistol, and spent months traveling alone in the South, researching more than 700 lynchings from the previous decade. David Smith continues. Wells visited places where people had been hanged, shot, beaten, burned alive, drowned, or mutilated. She examined photos of victims hanging from trees as mobs looked on, pored over local newspaper accounts, took sworn statements from eyewitnesses, and on occasion even hired private investigators. Dear ones, this was the true birth of investigative journalism in America, although no one gives Ida B. Wells that credit. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who writes for the New York Times Magazine, says, "It was astoundingly courageous work in the era of Jim Crow segregation and in which a woman did not have the vote. There was no protection from the law for a black woman who was going into territories where black people had been stolen from the jail and lynched with the help of law enforcement in those lynchings." She continues, "Think about the types of emotion in a community that has just lynched someone and strung their body up for public display, and then to have a black woman come in there asking questions. One has to ask, would I have the courage to do that?" Wells published her findings in the newspaper New York Age and in her groundbreaking books Southern Horrors, which was published in 1892, and A Red Record in 1895. According to Nicole Hannah-Jones, the official story of lynchings was just largely accepted, which was that black men were criminals and unknown vigilantes were just meting out justice to black criminals. You can look at the way that newspaper covered these things, and that was just accepted. And Ida B. Wells exposed the reality behind lynchings, which is that they were often used as economic retaliation. They were used to sow fear in black communities so that black people would stay in their place. She also exposed that while law enforcement would often say that these lynchings occur, quote, "at the hands of parties unknown," everyone in town knew who committed them, and often law enforcement took part. Cornell West writes, "Ida B. Wells teaches us that the black freedom movement has always been an anti-terrorist movement. Ida B. Wells was willing to call into question the bestiality and barbarity and brutality of Jim Crow and American terrorism and lynching." Cornell West continues, "It is important that we use the language of American terrorism, because terrorism has been integral to the emergence and the sustenance of American democratic experiment, beginning with the indigenous peoples and slavery. But after the Civil War, we get a new form of terrorism, crimes against humanity that sits at the center of American life. And Ida B. Wells forces us to come to terms with that. In doing so," says Cornell West, "Wells provided a higher moral ground and a higher spiritual ground for black Americans to stand upon. one that wouldn't fight back with an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, where we end up both blind and toothless, but a higher moral ground that said, I'm going to hit this issue head on, not with violence, but by exposing the truth directly but non-violently. Wells famously said, the way to right wrongs is to shine the light of truth upon them. The moral ground that Ida B. Wells gave America and gave Black Americans was one that so many others, including Coretta Scott King and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., would later stand upon. This moral ground is what our current Black Lives Matter movement stands upon, as it shines the light of truth on the ongoing lynching of Black Americans by police officers, most of whom are not held accountable for their crimes. Ida B. Wells herself noted, if this work can arouse the conscience of the American people to demand justice to every citizen and punishment by law for the lawless, I shall feel I have done my race a service. Que así sea, bendito sea. Say her name, Ida B. Wells. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
Your lamps trimmed and burning, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, for the work is almost done. Sister, don't you get worried, sister, don't you get worried, sister, don't you get worried, for the work is almost done. Brother, don't you get worried, brother, don't you get worried, brother, don't you get worried, for the work is almost done. Children, don't you get worried, children, don't you get worried, children, don't you get worried, for the work is almost done. Soon this journey will be over, soon this journey will be over, soon this journey will be over, for the work is almost done. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, keep your lamps trimmed and burning, for the work is almost done.
Hi again. Unitarian Universalist John Saxon reminds us, this religious community exists by its mission, as a fire exists by burning, but a fire cannot burn without fuel, and it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse, progressive religious community that transforms lives and serves the world. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community, is what fuels it and its mission. And without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves and be a beacon in a world threatened by division and fear. In this spirit, please join me in our words of offering. If not us, then who? If not open hearts, then what? If not now, then when? If not here, then where? If not generously, then how? If not us, then who? If you are on our virtual campus, perhaps this is the moment when you make your first-time contribution. Thank you so much for that. Here's a slide showing the different ways you can share. We also have baskets at the side doors for those who exit the Alluvial Avenue Sanctuary. No matter which campus you are on, you are invited to use your smartphone and make a contribution through Cash App at $UU Fresno. That's $UU Fresno. May this church continue to be worthy of the many forms of your gifts. As we prepare to end our service and enter into our afternoon, please join us in our chalice extinguishing words.
Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón.
We
extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts.
So before we end the service, let's first give an appreciation to Tina for being our worship associate, and also to Stolen Thunder. I hope each and every one of us here on our Alluvial Avenue campus and on our virtual campus will send their love and appreciation to Ron, running this for the first time. You did an awesome job. Thank you, Ron. So just a few quick reminders. To exit the sanctuary, we are going to invite you to let the socially distanced folks head out first, then the rest of you can follow. Coffee hour will be outside. We have 3 fired up heaters to keep you warm out there, plus hot coffee. And also, there will be a visitors table where you, if you are new or newish to the community, can ask questions from a member of our Board of Trustees, and they will give you all the dirt on this church community. Also, coming up after the service, we will be offering our Introduction to Unitarian Universalism workshop and class. It's a perfect way for folks who are new or newish to have really a 3-hour crash course in everything Unitarian Universalism. We will give you snacks at 12:15, and we will begin promptly at 12:30 here in the sanctuary. Tomorrow, we hope you will, I think we go into the next slide. Tomorrow, next slide. Nope, yep, next slide. Yay! Tomorrow, we hope you'll join us at the Martin Luther King March. gathering at 9:45, and we're hoping it doesn't rain on that parade. Next Sunday, and our next slide will encourage you, it is Invite a Friend Sunday next week. So we hope you'll invite someone to join you here in the sanctuary on Alluvial Ave, or invite them to join us on our virtual campus. The last reminder is the next slide. Our online auction, Love is in the Air, will be February 5th through 12th. And to tell us a little bit about this, Emily, who started us off with a reflection on the 8th principle, is back to let us know about the auction. If we could have Emily and her video. We hope Emily and her video. There should be a video. Hi, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Kaisinga, and I'm coming to you this morning to talk about this year's auction. Love is in the Air. It will be from February 5th through 12th and chaired by the dynamic duo of Valerie Johnson and Shelley Glassrud. This year's auction is going to be the biggest and best ever. We want to surpass last year and reach a goal of $30,000. This is where you come in. It's crunch time, and we need your donations. Donations should be emailed to auction@uufresno.org. That's auction@uufresno.org. Here are some ideas. Do you have a special talent? Could you host a dinner party? Could you donate a gift certificate? Do you have a vacation property in Hawaii? That would be sweet. Do you make delicious soups, desserts, chocolate, anything, or all of the above? How about a canoe trip down the San Joaquin River? A group bike ride, tickets to the Forestier Underground Gardens, movie tickets, manicures, facials, house sitting, pet sitting, dog walking, murder mystery dinners, dinners and charades, teaching tennis, teach pickleball, knit, a musical instrument, or anything else you're good at? Thank you in advance, and please get your donations in as soon as possible. And remember, invite a non-UU friend to join you in the bidding so we can reach our goal. Thanks.
Let's thank Emily. So we do have a tradition that we like to welcome folks who are here for the first, second, or third time. The introverts among us panic at this moment. I would be too. We don't do it to embarrass you, but we're genuinely glad on a Sunday morning. You could have been anywhere in Fresno or anywhere beyond, and you chose to be here. So if this is your first, second, or third time with us, would you either put your name in the chat box on our virtual campus or just rise here, stand up on our Alluvial Ave campus. We promise we won't leave you standing by yourself for long. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I invite the rest of the congregation to rise with them for our closing words and our sung benediction. If you came in a pod, please join hands. If not, please put your hands over your precious beating heart.
Hi, I'm Emily Kaisinga, and I'm coming to you this
morning.
Go
now, Emily's going again. She just can't wait to have that auction. Go now in peace. May you leave this place knowing you are good and knowing you are loved. Take your love from this place, share it in the world, but remember what Cornel West says, that justice is what love looks like in public. And stay safe until we meet again. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and that pure light within you guide your way on. Blessed be. Amen.
May we have safe passage, safe passage. May we have safe passage, safe passage on our way, safe passage on our way, wanderer, safe passage on our way, searcher. Safe passage on your way, sweet pilgrim, safe passage on your way. May we have safe passage, safe passage. May we have passage on our way.
Shalom and assalamu alaikum.
Lift every voice.
Thank you for your help.